Ding!
Hey, movie fans! Welcome to another episode of Movie Toast. I'm Drew Graber, and this is the show where we celebrate movies one drink at a time. Now, today we're going to be reviewing The Crimes of Grindelwald, the second film of the Harry Potter prequels of the Fantastic Beasts series. Now, in my reviews, I like to decide whether a movie is worthy of a toast or a roast. So today we are going to be talking about Crimes of Grindelwald and deciding whether this movie is worth the watch or not. So let's get to it. This movie, I believe, unfortunately deserves a roast. The story was complicated and messy, and the plot was just super undeveloped, and the only thing the movie had going for it was the acting. The story is one of the biggest problems with the film. There are so many characters and so many different subplots going on that it's hard to follow each one at each time, and for each one to have enough breath of fresh air for us to really follow it and believe that what is happening is, well, believable. I think that there were too many characters and too many different story arcs happening at the same time for us to be able to follow this in just a 2-hour runtime of a movie. If this were, say, done in a book with all these characters, it would have been more fleshed out and done better, which is what I think J.K. Rowling definitely should have done with this series, because she clearly has a lot of ideas and a lot of stories to tell from these prequels, but is limited by the fact that it's a movie and has around a 2-hour to 2.5-hour runtime. It doesn't give the story enough time to breathe. It doesn't give us time to take in what is happening. It's just scene after scene after scene of stuff going on with characters, and therefore certain character developments have to be cut short so that the plot can at least be somewhat coherent. And I think that's where the movie suffers the most, is that there's too much going on in this movie. And the fact that not terribly too much happens in this movie. It still feels a lot like how the first film felt, where it's just kind of a filler setup for the next film. And I'm wondering how many more of these movies are going to be just setups for the final movie. It's kind of, at what point are we going to make a movie that is a movie in itself? The acting was actually really well done. I think that Eddie Redmayne did a phenomenal job as Newt Scamander, as well as Dan Fogler as Jacob. And Jude Law did a phenomenal job as Dumbledore. And Zoe Kravitz did a great job as Lestrange. So I think the cast was really well done. Even Johnny Depp did a pretty decent job. I mean, I still have issues with him being cast as Grindelwald, because all I see when I see him on screen is Johnny Depp. Well, a weird ghost-like version. Why is it every evil wizard who they want to live forever, but somehow they look as ugly as all hell? Like, they just can't have a normal-looking dude be evil, I guess. They have to be really weirdly pale and gaunt, and I don't know. But overall, I think the acting did a really good job. Eddie Redmayne's portrayal of Newt Scamander is very detailed, especially in the fact that he seems to be somewhat on the autism spectrum, which I think is an interesting choice. He definitely identifies and can socialize better with animals than he can with people. He understands them more, and he feels like they understand him more than people do, which I think is a really good choice for a character like Newt Scamander, and I think Eddie Redmayne did a really good job at portraying that. From what character development that existed from the first film seemed to kind of go away, as Queenie seems to have been diminished into kind of just this ditzy obsessed with love, and I thought her character in the first film was a lot more well-rounded, but they kind of had to cut, I feel like, a lot of her stuff out of this film, making what happened. This is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to go into specifics, but I feel like her character was not portrayed as well as she was in the first one, even though in the first one, I think that she's my least favorite character in the entire series. She's annoying, and I'm just not a fan of her. I think the actress does a good job of playing the role, but I just don't really care for the character. She just kind of annoys me. And I think that Zoe Kravitz's character of Lestrange is also bittersweet, because I think Zoe Kravitz did a really good job with the character she was given, but ultimately it was just kind of, we didn't have enough time with her to really feel anything for her in any way during the film. So I just didn't find myself caring as much about these characters. The movie didn't give me much of an emotional draw to anything that happened in the film, and I think that's because the film was so crowded. Anything that was thrown at us being like, oh my gosh, big surprise, it was just kind of like, well, yep, that happened kind of thing. It wasn't really, didn't really get much of a reaction for me, because I'm just like, I don't understand why characters are making these choices, because we didn't get enough time to explain why. They gave us some kind of answer, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, I really need to see more of how this happened. One thing I'm glad this film did is it showed more creatures. I felt like the first film, being Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, was severely lacking in magical creatures, even though the film should have definitely been about finding magical creatures. I think this film did a better job at showing more of them, and I'm really glad we got to see more creatures in this film. I think it's a very important aspect of the film that we get to see more. I like the fact that we got more world building in this film. That is one thing I want to give props to J.K. Rowling for, is that the world building was actually very well done, and that's one of the things I enjoyed the most about this movie. I just wish we didn't sacrifice story so much for it, but it's kind of hard to balance that for something such as Harry Potter, where people want to know more about the universe, but we only have enough time for a 2.5-hour story. So I understand the struggle there, and I don't want to make anyone think that I think this movie is a terrible movie. I just think it suffers from its medium, is that J.K. Rowling is used to writing these long extended stories for this universe, and now she only has a limited amount of time for these stories, and therefore the story itself suffers while the world building thrives. Overall, I have to say, I don't think this is necessarily a bad movie. There are many parts of it that I enjoyed, and I think the story, while it's pretty messy and frustrates me a lot, I think it's coherent enough to follow. I think I followed it fine, but I had a lot of questions, and I had a lot of disbelief about characters' decisions, and I think that overall the movie is watchable. So, rewatch value. I think, honestly, the rewatch value is moderate to moderately high, even though I don't think this is necessarily a solid movie, just because, well, it's a Harry Potter movie. So if you're a Harry Potter fan like me, as you can tell, you are going to be watching these movies a lot. So Fantastic Beasts will probably be involved in that because it's at least a part of the universe. It's kind of like how Star Wars fans will still watch the prequels because it's Star Wars. They're not good movies, but somehow we still enjoy them to a certain degree. We can at least laugh at them. But I could find myself watching this movie again. I definitely do want to watch it again, because I kind of want to see if the second time around I can understand the characters' choices more, and the story is a little bit more coherent, and maybe I'll enjoy it even more. The creatures I enjoyed and the world building I enjoyed. I also really enjoyed the fact that they used more magic in this film than I feel like any other Harry Potter film to date. There was a lot of magic being used in this film, and I feel like that was something that was super undervalued in a movie about wizards. I like the fact that they need to sometimes solve stories without magic, but I also like the fact that they're using magic. I really liked this scene where Newt was showing off his kind of detective skills with this magic spell, and I thought that was one of the coolest parts of the movie for me. This movie did not live up to my expectations. That's how I'm gonna word that. I don't necessarily think this is a terrible movie. It's not a great movie. It hinges on good and bad. It's a meh. This movie is completely meh. Overall, I'd recommend going to see this movie. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you've probably already seen it anyway. If you like the Harry Potter movies, it's worth the watch. You can wait for it to come out on DVD or on demand or something. It's not something that I feel like you have to go see if you're not a huge fan of Harry Potter. I don't think you'd waste your 2.5 hours. I just think if you're not necessarily a Harry Potter fan, you might be really, really, really confused as to what's going on, because the story is pretty messy. It's non-coherent at points, and there's just a lot of stuff going on in the movie that either doesn't make sense or shouldn't be happening in the first place, because it's a waste of time. That's my review, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can also follow me on Twitter at @TheMovieToast, and remember, I'll be releasing new videos every Friday, so keep watching for those. Have a good one, everyone. Cheers.
Ding.